What's up, nerds? Welcome to another edition of Them Nerds. I am Tony, and that, of course, is the illustrious one and only Jerry. And we are coming to you today to talk about episode freaking 4 of WandaVision. Before we unravel this amazing half hour of television, I want to remind you that we are still trying to give away, speaking of, where is she? Wanda. We are still trying to give away the Scarlet Witch Funko Pop you see on screen. All you have to do to be entered to win is interact with our content. Like, subscribe, share, comment below, interact with us on social media, and the Scarlet Witch could be yours.
You can ask yourself, what's in the box?
I think we know.
Yeah, it's a Funko Pop.
After the recent events of WandaVision, I'm not so sure that I would want to be the proud owner of a Scarlet Witch. Let's talk about this show. Episode 4 took us completely out of this fantasy world that Wanda has so desperately been trying to keep us in. What was your reaction as things sort of kicked off? And I mean, at the beginning of the show, we were already texting each other like, oh my God, what is this? Look at that. What was the thing that most like punched you in the jaw about the beginning of the show?
I think the idea that we started off with the reverse snap was really, I mean, like, you know, right away, before you see anything else, you just see these dust particles floating into the screen and you know exactly what it's going to be. And then the idea that explains where she's been and then also where her mother went. And it's just, you know, this, and not only that, but to watch what something that we've all thought about, this idea that you've been gone for 5 years, you regenerate where you last were and how much the world's changed. And like, you just see the chaos going on in the hospital while these people are just popping up everywhere.
That's right. And it, you know, it also cements that the MCU is continuing from the reverse snap, the unsnap, as it were. Yeah. You know, we knew this already from Spider-Man, but it you know, it's yet another piece of evidence that that's where we're going from here on out. By the way, if you're watching this and you're yelling at your screen right now because we just spoiled something for you, get a life. The title of the video is WandaVision Episode 4 Review. Review means to look back on. So if you haven't watched it yet, why are you watching this?
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. The also I watch all of the TV with captions because I'm 150 years old. But at the beginning, you could faintly hear, but you could definitely read on the captions that there were lines from Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And you heard Maria Rambeau, who was, of course, Carol Danvers' close friend and confidant. You heard her voice, and then you heard young Monica Rambeau's voice. What was her name? Lieutenant Trouble or something?
Yeah.
And then it kind of morphed in with the little particles, and then chaos ensued.
Yeah. I thought that little inclusion, I think, was to... it's the idea of letting people know that she was who she was, because this whole other time we've seen her for the last 3 episodes, or at least definitely the last 2 episodes, she's been Geraldine. And so You're giving the idea that, no, this person actually is somebody you already know.
Right. And, you know, for anybody who follows the news about what's going on in the MCU and castings and stuff, we knew that this was Monica Rambeau months ago. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is also into this sort of stuff. And he said, you know, I'm disappointed that they spoiled that this was Monica Rambeau so far in advance. And it got me thinking that it definitely would have been a little more impactful if they kept this casting secret.
See, I don't know. I don't think that's the big surprises I need. You know, I mean, like, I'd rather be for a story that gets me being like, oh my gosh, that's so good, rather than being this idea that I didn't have any idea who this girl possibly could be. I mean, I think we were more surprised about the idea of why she's in this storyline at all.
Right. Yeah, that was something that, you know, we were talking about last night, that there's all these characters from, you know, other parts of the MCU that are getting these like super meaty parts in WandaVision, and they're probably going to be a bigger part of the MCU based on this than what they were doing in their other films. Like,
you got somebody from Captain Marvel, you got somebody from Thor, and somebody from Ant-Man. And then within a 36-minute episode from WandaVision, you got more of a story than you got in all three of those movies that they've been in.
Right. Yeah. You know, the idea that Wu and Dr. Lewis, what's her first name in there?
Darcy.
Darcy, yes. And then, of course, Monica, you know, you've got these like ancillary characters who were not, you know, in the main meat of the story of their respective, you know, films. And they're going to be, you know, playing a major part here. I like it.
I like it too. And, you know, it's one of those things like, I think that people liked the character of Darcy, but they found her to be a little bit annoying in Thor because it was kind of a throwaway character. What's the point of having her in there? And same thing with Officer Wu. Like, it's a cool idea, but this, I think, wasn't he just like part of the, basically like the enforcement police for the Civil War Accord, right? For the superhero Accord that they had. That was his whole point in Ant-Man 2.
Yeah, he was basically part of that whole effort to keep tabs on Scott Lang.
Basically, he was a home supervision officer. So it's like one of those things. Like now you have this whole thing that they're been promoted into this, you know, new kind of. I don't know if he's part of SWORD or not. I don't know if they've ever really explained that part of it.
Wu?
Yeah.
No, Wu is just in the FBI.
Yeah.
And the FBI calls in SWORD because they realize they're dealing with something kind of wonky. And so that's how we get Darcy.
I also thought it was a cool idea that you know, they kind of explained that Monica's mother, who we saw in the Captain Marvel, she along with Nick Fury are the people who created SWORD altogether.
Right. Yeah. I feel like they gave her character kind of a fitting ending because I don't think we're going to see that character on screen anymore unless it's a flashback or something. But, you know, they mentioned that she died 3 years after the snap and that she had played a huge role in creating SWORD. One of my favorite little Easter eggs from this episode, as Monica was walking back with her old friend, his name escapes me now, but there was a plaque on the wall for her mom, and they nicknamed her Photon, which is one of Monica Rambeau's aliases in the comics when she had all of her fantastic Captain Marvel-like powers. Yeah. I thought that was kind of a cool little Easter egg.
What did you, now watching it, you know, we have, obviously we've only gotten about 3 minutes into the show, but now watching it, from the last 3 episodes, do you have a whole different perspective of what you thought was going on? Did it blow away all the other speculations of what you thought was coming?
Well, I do think that, you know, and we even titled our first couple videos with the phrase wild speculation because we didn't know what in the hell was happening in this show. And we were just like fan casting and kind of like hoping that things would be a certain way. I do feel like my hopes for some of the characters that we were thinking might show up, maybe those hopes have been dashed a little bit. But I don't know. I don't think so.
I still have a real feeling that Agnes is Agatha Harkness.
Yes.
And I also noticed that one of the people who was missing off that board was Dottie.
Yes.
So there's 2 of the people that have the most mystery about them are the 2 of the people who have no information on that board.
Right. Yeah.
I also liked how Will was basically like fan speculating on the board also while it was going on. Why are there hexagons?
Yeah.
Vision.
He's us. That's hilarious. And that was something that, you know, I noticed that they kept showing over and over again was as they were watching the footage, those hexagons kept popping up. And then I noticed Wu wrote that on the board. So obviously, you know, the idea that the hexagon is associated with AIM, you know, that's still floating out there. We did kind of get our hopes.
Be a play on her hex powers?
Perhaps. We kind of got our hopes dashed about the beekeeper, though.
Yeah.
We thought he was going to be like an agent of AIM. And turns out he was just a dude in a hazmat suit.
He's a sewer rat.
Yeah. So the biggest like nugget that they dropped at the beginning of the show that kind of should give you some perspective on what's going on is as they pull up, the police officers say, they're like, well, what's the big deal about Westview? And they're like, it doesn't exist. It's not supposed to be here. So this town is not a real town. It's been created out of thin air.
So it makes you wonder, how did those people get in that town? Because they're obviously real people. They have real driver's license. They're real,
Yeah.
They must have got pulled in somehow, I'm guessing, the same way that Geraldine gets pulled in.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure we'll learn all about that here in the next couple episodes, but that I thought that was pretty cool. And then of course we got the mystery of the full color drone or full color helicopter turns out to be the sword drone, right? And they acknowledge that on their footage as they're watching it. So we now we have explanation about the drone. We have explanation about the beekeeper guy, and we know why there were some shakiness about Geraldine. She didn't really know why she was there. Things were a little harder for her to kind of like just fit into the rest of what was going on.
Yeah.
So,
but what doesn't make sense to me from watching the last episode to this episode is this. Agatha or Agnes and Herb, when they're talking, they make it a point to say she doesn't have a house and she doesn't have this. If there's no such thing as Westview, none of them really have houses there. How do they know that she's an outsider? They must have more of an idea of what's going on than the rest of them.
Yeah. I don't know what, because Herb, he was one of the people who had a driver's license that was up on the board, and they identified who he was out in the real world, but not Agnes.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of makes you wonder, is Agnes like a double agent for whoever is kind of, doing this? I don't know.
Yeah, could she have gotten rid of Geraldine because she's going to blow her cover?
Could be. And the footage, I think, that really helped to flesh out where Wanda's mind is at this point was her expulsion of Geraldine, when you see how she just like shot her through like every building and out of the bubble. And then she just kind of like fixed it, like, oh, nothing's wrong, no problems here. And I lost my train of thought.
She pushed her through the wall, fixed it. No problem. Vision walks to the door.
Right. And when we watched these events on the last one, this is where I was going before my brain went foggy. On the last one, we saw kind of her like, fixing things, changing things, editing things. And, we know that she does that. But as we're watching it on the TV broadcast with Darcy and Agent Wu,
they're not seeing it.
It's edited.
Yeah.
The glitches are edited out. So is Wanda editing what she's emanating out to the world, or is someone else in charge of what's getting sent out to the world, this signal, and they're the ones blocking it? I don't know.
Yeah. I also thought, one of the big surprises of the episode is when Wanda turns to look at Vision, and obviously there's the big reveal. But if you notice the steps from him walking up from the door to where he stops and she turns and looks at him, we see him normally. It's when she looks at him, which makes you wonder, is she seeing him that way all the time? Right.
In the last episode, when that happened, we did not see the grayed out Infinity Gem removed dead Vision.
Yeah.
We saw regular old Vision. But now in that same scene, Wanda does see the dead Vision. So like you're asking here, and it's a great question, does she see him like that all the time? Is she like spooked all the time by him? Or is she like trying not to see him that way, and then it keeps popping through, and maybe that's what's causing these little tears for her? Yeah. I don't know. It's so good though.
Man. It's ridiculously good.
And I'm sure people that watch this show regularly are just going to assume that we're just like MCU fanboys or whatever, but the connectivity that they are achieving with the MCU is like so top notch. It, as lifelong Marvel fans, and we've talked about this before. Both of us are definitely bigger Marvel fans than we are DC. Growing up with things like X-Men for both of us, but especially you, Spider-Man for both of us, but especially me.
Yeah.
And these are the heroes that we like really identified with and grew up with. And to see how they're being brought to life and how every little piece of the web is connecting, it's just so fun to watch.
Yeah. They've done a really good job of thinking outside of the box, yet still bringing in factual stuff from the comic books.
Right. Yeah, which brings me to my next point here. You're a big connoisseur of the X-Men, in particular the House of M storyline. Do you see this as still kind of dovetailing with House of M, or do you see it as its kind of wholly different approach to Wanda and her craziness?
There are aspects that are House of M, a group of people who are pulled into a world that they don't want to be at. And the whole point of House of M, when it starts falling apart, is when the characters that are inside of House of M start realizing that they're not supposed to be there, that this isn't the real world, and that's when things start falling apart. I believe Wolverine's actually the one who figures it out, which obviously they'll have to figure it out. Maybe Herb does it, I don't know. Yeah. But
maybe Herb is Wolverine.
Yeah. But then there was also that series that Vision got that was called The Visions. Right. And it was all about the suburban family that he had created. And this seems very close to that storyline.
Right. So it may be kind of an example of taking a concept that's familiar to us as Marvel fans and tweaking it and tailoring it so that it's a little more acceptable in the current framework of the MCU. So maybe they're taking, this idea that Wanda has created her own reality, but instead of doing the whole House of M, no more mutants sort of approach, maybe they're going to take on a little bit more of the Vision creating his own reality sort of thing.
Yeah. One thing I appreciate about Disney, especially about this series, is that, they only released the first 3 episodes of this to anybody to watch for the spoiler reel or whatever, so that critics could give you the idea of how the show is going to be. And for the most part, everybody had great, reviews on it. But then there was a few people who just, random, people being like, this makes no point, or how does this fit into the rest of it? And literally the reason why they only stopped at 4 was just because they wanted that 4 to be the point where they had to crumble it up, put it in a cylinder, slid on their side, and slide it up there, because they really stuck it to them at the very end. This episode right here, the first 3 episodes were crazy good. The third episode was amazing.
Right.
But this episode right now is just you've completely changed the whole. You could see how we're going, where we're now phasing off of the idea of SHIELD. That's going to be in the hindsight. I don't think we're going to see very much more of that. I think we're definitely going to a whole new extraterrestrial kind of portion of the MCU.
Right. Yeah, you have to sort of assume that, given the fact that, Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, they're gone, right? And who's the big focus now? It can't be Black Panther, at least not in the previous
realm that we thought
iteration, right? Yeah. So that leaves the only other big cornerstone sort of hero is Captain Marvel. Yeah. And that, combined with the fact that they are talking about Secret Invasion as a TV series on Disney Plus, the fact that we ended Spider-Man 3 with Talos and his wife revealing that they were playing Maria Hill and Nick Fury. And then we see Nick Fury up on out in outer space, which, if you watch our channel, you'll know that I recently posted a video that's talking about all of this, where we see what could be construed as the peak, which is Sword's outer space. Yeah. So you kind of have to think that with Sword being such a big part of this show, with Fury spending his time in space, with the inclusion of Skrulls, with Captain Marvel kind of taking this front and center role, we're going to space, man.
Yeah.
Thor's in space. Thor's with the Guardians. He's out there.
I also think that the way that they went about with this whole, pretty much since Scarlet Witch or Elizabeth Olsen came into the MCU, she became a fan favorite for a lot of people. I mean, mainly because people have an idea of what in their head is going to happen because they've seen over the last 50 years what this character can do.
Right.
But I like the way that they went. They've kind of changed her from being. They always wrote her where she was kind of mentally unstable, right?
Yeah.
But now she's not really that she's mentally unstable. They have her more trauma based, where she was, affected by losing her family, and then she got even more trauma based by being brought in, tested on, and then she falls in love with this synthezoid, who's then she's forced to kill, and then be brought back to life, and then killed in front of her. Then she's killed, and then she's brought back, and then when she comes back, all the closest aspects of like her friendships that she had built over the course of since her brother died are all gone now. Black Widow's gone,
Right.
Vision's gone. Tony Stark's gone. Everybody who, Steve Rogers, who was basically turned away all of his friends to keep her safe, is gone,
Right.
or 100. And and so this idea, that's what's made her snap. It's not, like it's the idea that the trauma of all these events have caused her to get to this point where she's like, no, I'm just going to make the perfect world for myself.
Right. I feel like for the casual fan, Scarlet Witch in the MCU up to this point, at least, has been kind of an ancillary character. She's just sort of like, she's one of the Avengers and she's around and she does cool tricks with the red lights and whatever. But like, if you really get down to it, like what were the huge events that, have happened in the MCU? Well, Ultron, of course, and Thanos would be the biggest events, other than, of course, Loki and his alien friends coming to Earth. But when you look at these events, they, of course, affected everybody. Everybody was damaged in some way by these events. But it's hard to see any other character who was damaged to the extent that Wanda was.
Yeah.
I mean, Ultron comes into the picture, and, her whole life is turned upside down. Her brother is killed, and then she's like, okay, well, I'm just going to try to fit in with this other family. And then Thanos is like, the hell you are.
Yeah.
So she, of all the other, characters that we've seen, she probably has had the most negative, effect to her life from these big events.
Yeah, I agree. It's just so good. So we're now on episode 4. We got 5 episodes left. What is something big that you want to see happen that if you see it at the end, episode 9 is done and you see one thing, what would it be that you want to see?
Either or Professor X or Magneto. We've talked about it.
Yeah.
On this show repeatedly. We thought perhaps Professor X was the voice on the radio. We find out now that it's in fact Agent Wu, which was kind of the common wisdom out on the internet. Yeah. But you got to dare to dream. I envision her. See what I did there? Envision.
Yeah.
Clever. I foresee her being too powerful for Sword to deal with. And whoever is containing her or manipulating things, if there even is, this manipulation, which I'm sure there is, she's going to be too powerful for them to contain her. And who's left? It has to either be, Eric Lensher coming in and pulling a Darth Vader and being like, no, I am your father. Or Professor X has to come in and do his whole thing and get her sorted. That's I would love to see that as like a bookend on this show to kind of push us forward and see what we get in the future.
Yeah.
What about you?
Especially with Doctor Strange, into the multiverse of madness, we obviously, I assume that Wanda will leave this miniseries or whatever we want to call it, this TV event, still troubled, like pretty damaged. My one thing that has to happen by the end of number 9 is that there has to be an acknowledgement that there are mutants. I don't care who it is, right, but that they acknowledge the fact that these are what they are, so that we all know that, and that she's not the only one.
Right. Yeah, I think that they could do that very easily. they mentioned at the beginning of the show about cosmic radiation or whatever the word they used was. It could be easily sort of written in that sort of radiation is the signature of all mutants.
Yeah.
And then you have the idea that that's how Cerebro can be used. You have the idea that that's how the government can try to track them. It would just be kind of an easy way to retcon this idea of, yeah, there's mutants out there. We just didn't know how to track them.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty damn good point. Good theory.
And if I'm going to keep going down the road of wild speculation, which I always am, if we get some kind of acknowledgement of mutants in this series, we already know that Falcon and the Winter Soldier is traveling to Madripoor.
Yeah.
Could this be when we get to see our new Wolverine introduced, at least in canon? He's named. Could it be?
Well, there's definitely a very good chance that we're going to see mutants in that show. So they have to somehow acknowledge what these people are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hope they're just not going to go this superhuman route. Like that's what we're not even going to explain what the mutation is, because I think that's important.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you've been, it's been kind of watered down with the idea of Inhumans.
Yeah.
On, Marvel TV, calling everybody who's, could be a mutant. They're calling them all Inhumans.
Yeah.
Which, what a terrible show that was.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously we know that the Inhumans still exist in the MCU because we're going to have Miss Marvel showing up and she's an Inhuman.
It's true.
So
it's true.
There's so much to unpack.
I know. And now I'm like, where could they possibly go from here? We knew.
I don't know. I have no idea.
We knew, like, watching the first 2 episodes that were basically like, oh, it's just this cute little sitcom thing, and you can see the little, holes are being poked in reality or whatever. It was like, yeah, anything could happen. And then in episode 3, when things started, kind of unraveling big time there at the end, you're like, oh, what's going on? And after episode 4, it's like, shit, I don't know.
Yeah, no idea.
I don't know.
I think I don't even know whether or not they, Mephisto is this idea, and Grim. I don't think any of that's real. I think it's just her. I think she's just completely nuts. Now there may be other people in there that are, taking advantage of her being nuts, but I don't know. Don't know. I have no idea. And that's the best part about this whole episode, was that we were all so convinced of exactly which path we were going, and they were like, nah, you don't know.
Nope. And it's, it's nice to be fooled every once in a while when you're watching, especially for people like us who are so constantly looking for connections and looking for, how are they going to tie this into that? And who's this going to be? And like, we always have these, 10 different ideas mapped out. And then they're like, nope.
You don't know.
You don't know. You don't know nothing.
We try.
All right. Hey, I'll tell you what, nerds. You got to come back next Friday and talk to us about what's going on with episode 5. Because
we're going to stretch out a 30-minute show into a 40-minute YouTube video. Prepare yourself.
Hey, we really have to pick this thing apart. You know what I mean? All right. Thanks for checking in with us today on our weekly WandaVision roundup. Keep tabs on our channel all week long. We've got some interesting content coming your way. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share these videos if you want to spark conversation with your nerdy friends. And don't forget to interact with us on social media at We Them Nerds on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. That's it for us today from Westview, which doesn't really exist. Be good. Be good to each other. Later, nerds.
In the box.